Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a great guest, Natalia Ojeda. She currently is a California State University San Marcos through the Extended Studies program. She is pursuing a cybersecurity major. She previously attended Southwestern Community College in Chula Vista and has been successful in securing several internships since being a student at Southwestern Community College. Her personality and dedication are contagious and exemplary. She is a huge advocate and proponent of SHIP at any opportunity she has. She currently just finished an internship with Qualcomm, but has held positions with NIWIC, Northrop Grumman, just to name a few. Natalia Ojeda, welcome. Thank you for being here with Success Innovation and doing the little episode with us today. Anything you want to add that I might have missed from that introduction?
No, I mean, one of the things that I kind of do on the side is my podcast. Recently just renamed to Blue Skies. It's kind of where I share like my experience as a student, as a STEM student athlete in the past and now former. But just kind of giving advice is how I get through college and the STEM world and prior to my injury, the athletic world.
Awesome. So make sure that you check out her podcast, Blue Sky. Is that what you said?
Blue Skies,
Blue
yeah.
Skies, Blue Skies. So check it out, Spotify and or YouTube. You'll definitely find those episodes and connect with Natalia Ojeda. So Natalia, can you share two core values that are very important to you, and why are they important to you, and how have they kept you afloat?
Absolutely. So my two core values that I always go back to is family or familia and also resilience. I think those are the two things that I keep at my core because it makes me who I am. It's part of who I am, and it's what keeps me going throughout some of the challenges I've been facing since my college career started.
Okay, so you're a local Chula Vista individual here in the southern part of San Diego. You attended Otay Ranch High School, and you were a student athlete at that point, and then you transferred over to Southwestern Community College. What advice would you give some individuals, young students, early college career students, in order for them not to give up if, one, they're student athletes, and just in general, if they're being faced with the hard, arduous engineering courses and sometimes they get bogged down and they don't know what to do? What advice would you give them in order for them not to give up?
Absolutely. So I have a lot to say on this just because I went through the struggle myself. I'm still kind of essentially going through the struggle of balancing a lot of things. I would say my very first point of advice is to not bite off more than you can chew, because that was definitely something that I did. I remember at one point, my very first season at Southwestern College, specifically, um, I took, I believe it was 20 units, and that on top of, and three of which was like a softball class. So like being in season and essentially 17 units of academic classes, it was pretty difficult. And I honestly, what the reason being is because I was like, I want to get in and out. But if I could do it again, I would slow it down so that I can manage my time. And not only that, it gives you time to actually learn. Like if you're loading your plate too much, at the end of the day, you're not going to grasp concepts as best as you probably can. Um, or maybe just kind of be a little more strategic about the classes and the layout and considering things that you might be having going on in that semester. That's one thing. Another thing is just having fun at the end of the day, because I know I stress myself out a lot. If you can lean on your peers, lean on the tutoring that is often free at universities at times, lean on that, because even if you don't feel like you need help, I'm very much the person that will try my best and try to get it done myself. Um, Often maybe too much at first, and then like last minute, I'm like, okay, wait, I need help. So if you can get that process started earlier, then you're gonna feel less stressed out throughout the semester. Um, one thing I like to say is that being a STEM student athlete adds like an extra layer of stress just because of how demanding athletics can be. And also having a STEM major is not the easiest route to go, but it's definitely rewarding. So as a STEM student athlete, I would say, man, just try to find those people that are on similar routes as you, because those people are gonna know the most, like how you're struggling, how you're staying up late. I remember at my Southwestern days, like I was the only one doing homework, like on the van on our way to the games, and a lot of people on my team were like, "Wow, you're crazy!" Like I wouldn't be doing that, but they didn't have that extra stress of having like a STEM degree. And so had had another teammate or someone else on a different team that was doing the same kind of thing as me, I feel like I could relate to them, and they could have been a comfort in like relating to each other on the struggles that come with doing both. So find your community for sure.
Find your community, make sure you don't overload yourself, and seek help and support sooner rather than later. Awesome advice from you to the individuals in order for them to move forward and not necessarily give up, right? You mentioned that you were a student athlete for a few years. That included, obviously through your high school career, and then the Southwestern Community College, and then when you transferred over to a four-year university, you also were a student athlete at that point. Being a student athlete, I know that you love the game, but I want you to share a couple of obstacles that you experienced, maybe one or two major ones that pop into your mind right now. You did mention that you do have an extra layer put on top of you by being a STEM major, so that adds a little bit more pressure to you. How did you finagle? How did you deal with the obstacles that came to be when you were a student at Southwestern College and when you transitioned over to moving out of town to another four-year university? Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So in high school, I was doing a lot. So my freshman year in high school, I guess we can just go back to that. I was also, so one semester I did cross country, but I also was on my softball club team. So there was days where I was after like running at cross country practice, I would go to my club softball practice, and then they would be doing conditioning. And it was just like a lot to handle. But not only that, the games on the weekends. I mean, if you're a high school softball player, you know weekends are for softball, like no doubt about it. And so usually a normal or someone that doesn't have like a demanding sport or just extracurricular activity, it doesn't have to be sport, you know that like trying to find time to do homework like on the weekends, because yes, you do get weekend homework, it's tough. So you're learning um time management as you go. And was I great at it before in the past? Absolutely not. I just tried to do homework when I could. There was times where I was at family functions or family parties and doing my homework in the corner. There's been a lot of times where I had to do that. So having support from your family is definitely huge. Um, so once I went to Southwestern College, that transition in itself was pretty difficult too, because you're fed this idea that you should be going straight to a four-year. Like all this time and dedication you put into the sport and even academics. Like I took a lot of AP classes, which I have my own like opinions on that as well looking back. But so having that transition from high school to a 2-year community college, that was kind of like in a way a heartbreaking thing, because I had this image like I'm gonna go straight to a 4-year on scholarship and it's gonna be great and I'm gonna love it, which can be a reality for some people. But at the end of the day, the finances just didn't make sense. And Southwestern College, I mean, any California community college, you get the first 2 years free. So my parents were like, what are we doing? Like looking at some of these 4 years that are offering you a X% of scholarship when you can go free to a community college and still play ball there. So I kind of had to mourn like the 4-year dream at the time. And so being at Southwestern, honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like looking back, that's what I should have done and that's what I did. And I'm glad I did it. I will always advocate for community college because not only are you not paying the 4-year price for general education classes, you're getting quality education. I mean, of course, there's good professors and bad professors, but I like to always compare it to like a 4-year school because I know people that went to a 4-year school and a lot of them were like, oh my God, I wish I went to community college. I'm paying X, Y, and Z amount for general ed classes that aren't even for my major. So a lot of those people would come to a community college on different times, like the winter session or the summer session to try to get those done. So I felt like in a sense, like a privilege of being there, especially since at 4-year colleges or sorry, 4-year universities, a lot of the professors need to do research. So a lot of their focus goes into the research. So, I mean, not to say that they're bad professors at all, but they have, um, sometimes a lot of their efforts are on on research rather than their classes. So um, that's why at community college, you get that one-on-one, you get really high value education from some professors that really want to help you and are dedicated to the class itself. So yeah, I wouldn't change that experience at all. I met a lot of great people. That's when I was introduced to SHIP. I had heard about it prior. I took a tour of Qualcomm and I met the president of SHIP at the time at UCSD or USD. I can't remember at the moment, but he was like, when you get to college, you got to make sure to look for SHIP. So that's what I did. And that's when I got involved and I was on the board and I met a lot of great people. I mean, without them, without their guidance and how to make a LinkedIn, do my resume, I don't think I would have landed some of the internships that I landed at the time at all. Especially being that I had a STEM student athlete background, the time to try to figure all this out on my own I had no time. um, and then transferring to a 4-year, that was a whole ordeal in itself. I mean, there's so much that goes into where you're going to be spending the next 2 to 3 years of your life. Uh, and so I had 3 final options. It was a school in North Carolina, a school in Florida, and then a school in Irvine. And I was really pulling to go to the Florida school. Like that was my dream school. Not that I knew it was my dream school, but having talked to the coaches and then on my visit, I loved the campus and I loved everything about it. And the paper or my FAFSA and all the finances, it made it seem like it was going to be a full ride, honestly. It was very close to a full ride. And just I don't know what came upon me, and like I really wanted to double check that this I was seeing the right thing because I mean I worked so hard and I was like I don't know what thought came to mind. I was like, I want to double check this. So we went to their financial aid office on my visit and I spoke to one of the people there and we were showing them like, are we crazy or are we seeing like an almost full ride with academic and athletic scholarship? And they took a minute to look at my documentation and they're like, unfortunately, um, what you're seeing is 2 separate scholarships, but at this school, you can't stack your scholarship. So you can't use your student scholarship and you can't use your athletic scholarship on top of one another. And I was like, that was so heartbreaking because I would have had to come out of pocket at least 20K a year. That's with like I think I would have chosen the athletic scholarship because it would have been slightly more than the academic one. And so knowing that, it was just heart-wrenching. And my dad was there with me and he knew how heartbroken I was at the time. So that didn't pan out. North Carolina was definitely an option as well. But my parents, I mean, Florida was far too, but then North Carolina was like way further, I guess. I don't know the geography on that, but it just seemed like it was either going to be Florida or Irvine. So at the time also my grandma was sick or not doing so well. So that also played a big role in my decision. I wanted to be able to come back to see her as much as I could, and I'm glad I did. And so yeah, I was there for not even a year. And then I had my injury, which I don't know if we want to get into, but I had an injury there, and it kind of got me off my tracks when it came to being a STEM student athlete. And now I'm at Cal State San Marcos. I'm doing their extended learning, as we mentioned before, program, and it's in cybersecurity, and it's for 2 years. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So you opened the door for the discussion on the injury. If you feel comfortable enough, obviously, you don't have to give enough details, but you do have to be honest as to when you or anybody who is a student athlete and you actually obtain a scholarship, there are little caveats when you actually sign that contract with any given entity, university, right? When you actually get a scholarship. And as a student, as a young individual, you think, oh, I'm set. I'm going to go play XYZ sport. In your case, it was going to be softball, right? And all of a sudden you're playing, but then you get injured. So what was the injury? What happened? How did you get supported or not supported by the university? And I'm pretty sure that this is very common across universities of what happens to student athletes when they get injured and they no longer can actually provide a return on investment for that entity as a player. So what did you go through? And this is more for awareness of others who are possibly considering becoming students with student scholarships, and what to be wary of and what to expect if it ever happens to them.
Yes, so my injury, the timeline was pretty unfortunate. It started with I was in a car accident months prior to my injury, and that's where I sustained a concussion. I was out for most of the fall season, and I decided to come back home, especially to be with my grandma. Um, and so during that time, my grandma's health got progressively worse, and she did end up passing in December, which was very heartbreaking because she was the glue to my family. So having lost her during that time was difficult. So coming back to softball, I was honestly very excited just because softball's my outlet for sure. So having gone through a lot of stuff during the fall, it was I was excited to come back and kind of prove myself, considering I had missed portion of the time. So I had a great weekend of softball, my only weekend at a 4-year level, and I did great. Honestly, I was really excited about my progress and having, again, missed most of the fall. Uh, I was competing well. Then the first practice back after that was a Monday. I remember very clearly. We were doing drills, and we had done this drill before. I just I think the setup was a little different this time. So I'm gonna try to explain it as best as I can, especially with people that might not know about softball or baseball. So we use like a stand to put the ball on, and we hit off of the stand. And this particular drill, we were tied to a resistance band. So imagine like a resistance band around your waist, and then part of the resistance band was connected to a fence. And so I was taking my reps, and I wasn't swinging lightly because I that's just I was practicing my weight transfer. Anyway, so I was swinging pretty hard, and at some point in my swing, this was like maybe 3 swings in, the bat got caught to the resistance band. And so when it got caught in the middle of my swing, it came back and hit me square in the mouth. So I just remember going stiff, and just like falling to the floor. I didn't go unconscious, but I was in shock. And I remember just leaning over, and there might be a little bit of detail that might trigger some people, but I had 5 teeth knocked out, a lot of bone missing, and just obviously blood coming out. And so it was a pretty crazy experience. I just remember being at first, I mean, I had adrenaline, so if it hurt, it didn't, honestly, because I couldn't feel much. I just remember once I realized what happened, being very upset because I had just come back from from an injury, from my grandma passing away, and then this happened. So it's just a really unfortunate series of events. And I remember being upset, and then at some point, I I kind of got not over it. 'Cause, I mean, it's a huge thing, but I just remember with my teammate, I was crying, and then at some point, I was just like kind of laughing because I had my cousin's wedding to go to, and I literally had no teeth at the time. So um, it was a very dramatic experience. It was a very traumatic experience, and I had an exploratory surgery that day. So after all that, honestly, my scholarship wasn't taken away. Not that I don't know if I even got that far if they would have taken it away. What's funny is that I also did cross country, and it wasn't to do it competitively. It was more to get into shape, but they needed people for the cross country team. So I had that scholarship on my academic profile, and then the softball one. So honestly, there was really no conversation about taking away my scholarship. The one unfortunate thing about this school is that when it came to dealing with the insurance, their insurance to try to pay for anything that I needed, including like doctor visits or the surgeries, there is really little to no support on that. Um, which was pretty unfortunate. So it's to this day I've been dealing with it actually. I mean, there's the process isn't done yet. Like what you see is like something temporary. And so it was pretty unfortunate that there was little to no support in that space because my family is doing everything they can, and there's times where we have to come out of pocket for certain things and then get reimbursed at other points. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. Also, after a certain amount of time, like no one called to check up at any point. Like they did maybe like 3 months out of what happened, and then after that, it was just kind of like crickets on their end. Um, so that was pretty tough to realize. Like, not that they didn't care, maybe I don't know. I mean, they were also in season, but it just felt a little bit like, okay, well, she's gone. That's it. Instead of like treating it as, oh no, this is someone that was on the team and maybe we should check up on her, how's she doing, this and that. But yeah, I mean, um, so the school I went to, Westcliff University, honestly, I didn't have a great experience, even outside of my injury, like just roommate situations, which I know is pretty common in the college life, going to a 4 year and moving out of your house. Um, so I wouldn't deter people from doing sports at all. I would just say to just know the realities of what could happen, and learning to deal with injuries in a way that you're not burning yourself out. Mine was kind of like um, really, I would say, rare, and I would honestly blame it on just the drill itself because I have yet to find a drill online that resembles what we were doing. And if there was anything that resembles it, the resistance band was not hip level, it was more like towards the ground. So in my head, to prevent something like what happened to me from happening. So yeah, just know what you're getting yourself into. Make sure you go to a school that doesn't treat you as just a number, and treat you as a student athlete who wants to get their education done, and because that's important. So if you find like a team that's very family based, very tight knit, that's more the team you want to go to rather than maybe like the big name. You want to go somewhere where you're valued.
On. Right. Well, that's thank you for sharing that. I'm pretty sure that was very difficult to one put into words right now, and to relive in the last couple of minutes where you share that. Right. So, from what you were saying, being a student athlete, obviously in high school, you had this dream that every school kid, regardless of whether they're student athletes or not, is going to a 4 year university, right? And then you at a personal level had to make that hard decision to go into a 2-year community college, which turned out to be a good decision for you. And it's a great option financially, right, for a lot of students, right? As long as you, from my perspective, as long as you have a focus and you keep to that, true to that focus, and you ask for help and not get lost in the weeds per se, right? But I want to ask you, how did you figure out that you wanted to be an engineer, and what has been?
Um, so the way I found engineering or discovered that I wanted to pursue engineering was back in middle school, honestly. So I had an opportunity to go to the Mujer Adelante, no, sorry, Adelante Mujer conference. And this was for middle schoolers, high schoolers, and this program essentially brought in a lot of professionals from different areas. So we had an engineer, we had politicians, we had teachers, and just different workshops to mold us and try to get us to look into what we wanted to do in the future, which I'm very grateful for. And honestly, if there's any middle schoolers, high schoolers that are willing to attend, it's very valuable because it kind of opens your eyes to the options. Coming from a family that weren't any of those things at the time, it was really nice to see, okay, this is what I can do in the future. Like, you like math, you like science, look into engineering. You like this, you like that. So it's kind of based off your interest. Um, and that was the first time I met an engineer, and her name was Delta. I won't forget. She was actually from Northrop Grumman, and she was an aerospace engineer. So seeing her and seeing what she did, and she gave a speech about like what engineering is and what that looks like, I was very intrigued, and I thought she was the coolest person in the world. So little after that conference, I decided I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. And so that's kind of what I went throughout high school, believing or thinking that I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, which I thought was very, very cool. And so it was my senior year where I started hearing about how difficult it was to get a job as an aerospace engineer at the time. Um, I don't know how true it holds now, but so then I was like, okay, maybe I have to pivot. And I knew I was into computers, and um, I took a computer science class my senior year to see if I liked it. And so after that, I did enjoy it. It probably wasn't as in depth, obviously, as like a college course, but it was a good introduction to what it looks like, what it is. So I decided to, once I got to Southwestern, I was going to do computer science. And so that's what I did. I did my AA in computer science. I got my AA. And then it wasn't until my internships that I decided to switch over to cybersecurity. So at NIWIC, or NAVWAR, it used to be called, I started off in my first summer as a computer science major in a computer science type of project that they assigned me to. And I really did enjoy it. I think I was probably one of the people that was more learning from the people on my team than leading it at the time, just because of my knowledge. And then the next summer, so throughout that first internship, I heard cybersecurity a lot. Like, that was a buzzword at the time. And I was really intrigued because, I mean, obviously the Hollywood kind of paints it out to like a hacker in a sweater and just like in the dark. But I just heard the buzzword a lot, and I just started asking a lot of questions about like, what is it? Like, what do you do? Just out of curiosity. And I really liked what it focused on, and just the role of cybersecurity. So I ended up switching, or I ended up deciding that I wanted to pursue that as my 4-year bachelor's degree. So then the next summer, they actually put me onto a cybersecurity project, which was very nice. I mean, from going from computer science to cybersecurity, it was really nice to get that exposure. And so that's when, after that summer, that's when I knew for sure, like, this is definitely what I want to do. And I just continued pursuing that after after that summer. And that's honestly the real benefit of doing internships, is you discover exactly what you want to do. Because honestly, reading a job description, you're not going to know you want to do something. It might sound good, it might sound intriguing, but until you get your hands onto an actual project, or somewhere where you're doing the work, that's when you'll know, yes, I like it. No, it's not for me. Let me try to find something else.
Awesome. That's really great information, great insight, and thank you for sharing your path on how you actually decided to, one, find engineering, aerospace engineering nonetheless, and then all of a sudden, something happened along those couple years when you were in middle school, high school, and then you decided to go and pursue computer science. But I'm glad that you're finding your path, and I'm glad that the internships that you have gotten so far have actually been fruitful, successful. So that being said, one thing is the expectations, and another thing is the reality when you actually go into the internship job industry portion, right? So I want you to talk a little bit about what your expectations were. You kind of hinted at you're this hacker, you're uncovering, opening, cracking codes, being able to get into whatever secret government agency's website and whatnot, just per Hollywood, and then all of a sudden you're actually going into an internship with NIWIC and or Qualcomm and or Northrop, just to name a few of those. And I want you to talk about your expectations before you actually had an internship versus the reality and the progression of the positions that you've held. And also, what advice would you wish you had before you actually entered any of those positions?
Absolutely. So, um, when I started at NIWIC, I honestly didn't have many expectations, at least for my first one, because I didn't have an internship prior and I didn't know anyone. I mean, I went to SHIP Southwestern too, so I knew people that were doing internships, but maybe not the same major. So it was gonna look different for them. So my first internship with NIWIC as a computer science major, it was remote and because it was during COVID time. And so the fact that I didn't have an expectation, it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is nice. Like the flexibility of it. I guess I could speak to that is there's certain companies that have more flexible schedules. And in my head, I don't know, engineering just sounds very demanding and very strict. But when I did my first internship, it was very much like, hey, here's your project. Collaborate with your team on what times you're going to work on that, collaborate on the times that you want to meet up for that, and then you're pretty much either off the hook for the rest of the day or you're coming back to the general cohort to see someone give a talk about what they do on their day to day. So the flexibility of it did surprise me, as long as you're communicating, which isn't true for all STEM positions. I just a disclaimer on that. But then when I did my cybersecurity internship the next summer, I was really excited just because this is kind of what I wanted to do at the time. So getting into the details of how certain things are done was really nice. My expectation was probably to do the cool stuff behind the scenes. Not that I didn't do cool stuff, but it was more seeing the technical side of things and how slow some processes might be compared to what you see in Hollywood, like, oh, super fast and like a script running on the screen, which makes it seem like they're typing really fast. So it was seeing the reality of exactly what they do and some of the processes that they have in place. I got to learn about, I'm just going to put a topic out there. It's called quantum key distribution. So like quantum computing. And that was really interesting because that's in like the research phase and it's not necessarily um, a product or something that's in place right now. And it has a long way to go. But seeing some like futuristic technology or the potential of it was really cool. Um, and then I went to Northrop Grumman and I worked with system administrators. So this was kind of a one-off from my cybersecurity journey. It was more IT space or blue teaming, you could say, because they harden machines, they build up VMs for the lab and do a lot of like the background work. So essentially that role was supporting engineers who are actually doing stuff for the aircrafts that they work on. So seeing that and seeing how important cybersecurity is in that space, especially the DoD space, in securing systems and being the background to that was really interesting. At that time, I did miss kind of the coding aspect of it because a lot of that is like configuration, messing with settings and auditing. Um, so now that I went to Qualcomm, that was kind of more what I wanted to do, is being a lot hands-on on a project. So I got to work on two projects, and it was a lot of hands-on and a lot of making the project your own. So the first project was more collaborating with my team, and then the second project was kind of like my own thing, and I got to do it solo. So in that sense, it was really a good dynamic because you start and you're learning with your teammates, you're kind of figuring out the dynamic of the company so that you can get your job and work done. And then the second one was like, okay, I learned that and now I get to apply it to something that I can call mine, or contributing to a professional's project too. So um, I would say the reality of cybersecurity is that there's a lot of roles. Not everything is penetration testing, which is what you see on TV, and that's what seems the most intriguing to most people. But there's so much to do in cybersecurity. I used to think computer science was a really broad major, and cybersecurity sometimes falls under computer science, but then cybersecurity itself is huge too. So um, it's really about, and if you're interested in cybersecurity, it's really about doing internships or really doing projects that is guided by someone in cybersecurity, because they can tell you like, oh yeah, that's something I actually do on my day-to-day, or that's something I don't do on my day-to-day. And this is more this role. So honestly, you definitely need guidance on what roles mean, because you can read, and I've done it, you can read the job descriptions all you want online, but you really don't know what that means until you either research it thoroughly or you do an internship where you see every role. And Qualcomm did a really great job in exposing us to all the different roles that they have, and a lot of roles in cybersecurity.
Awesome. That's really, really great insight. And, thank you for sharing your experience with those various corporations and the internships you held within each one of them, and also sharing a little bit of the expectation versus the reality that you lived. And obviously, I'm pretty sure that you're more confident, more ready, and able to continue moving forward in your path, right? So, that being said, from your experience as a college student still, and from being a student athlete, but you're no longer a student athlete, you're trying to focus on your career path at this point, is there anything you would change from your past at this point?
If there's anything I would change in my past, a lot of the times, like, I'm sure the expected answer would be like my injury. But to be quite honest with you, the biggest lesson I've learned from my experience starting college or even in high school is that things happen for a reason. Um, so just going back and reflecting on exactly what that means in my journey. When I got a concussion, that happened for a reason, because I got to be with my grandma and see her a lot more than I could have if I was playing softball and busy in Irvine versus San Diego. And then my injury happened for a reason, because honestly, the curriculum at Westcliff University, at least specifically for computer science, with a focus in cybersecurity, it wasn't going to prepare. I know it wasn't going to prepare me for industry. And I would have had, and I knew, like, right when I got there and was in my first couple classes, I knew I would have to do a lot on my own to get up to speed, and rely on the internships to really prepare me for industry. And and the fact that I honestly didn't feel myself there because of just certain roommates or certain teammates, and some of the encounters I had with them. Like, I really had to be, it kind of felt like on guard, or really, it just wasn't myself. I'm a very friendly person, and I like to get along with people. And I just felt like I couldn't do that at the time. So the not so strong academics at Westcliff, and the fact that I just didn't feel at home, on that team, especially with everything going on. In hindsight, it, I'm glad that I got hit in the face with the bat because it kind of pushed me in the situation I should have been in. Not to say, I mean, if I could do it again, I would still pursue softball. Like I know that wouldn't change for a fact. But looking back, it happened for a reason. One conversation I had with a teammate afterwards, she was like, honestly, and I mean, religion aside, but she said, God knew that you were not gonna quit. Like I know you knew that this school wasn't meant for you, but he knew you weren't gonna quit. So he had to take you out of that situation, quite honestly, forcefully. And it was true because I don't like to quit things. I was gonna finish my 4 years there, like with everything that I had. So getting hit, pushed me to pursue stuff that felt more right to me. Do I wish I could still be playing softball right now? Absolutely. And I honestly could. I probably could if I really stuck my feet in the ground and or in the sand and continued. But it just felt like my cybersecurity career was a lot more becoming a lot more established than my softball career was especially at the turning point of getting my injury. And then to go back, honestly, it's kind of like being scared that I'll get injured in the same area, like getting hit in the face with a ball or something that'll kind of backtrack my progress because bone grafting and all that, it takes like once you get a bone graft, it takes at least 3 months to heal. So it's like, oh man, if I have to go backwards, that's gonna really, it's not gonna be fun. So yeah, I wouldn't change. I mean, long story short, I wouldn't change anything that happened to me because I learned and I grew from a lot of the challenging times. Like, um, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change much. I would change certain things, like, I mean, some family members getting sick. I would, if I had the power to do so, I definitely would. I mean, my mom just went through a really tough health patch. Um, so I would definitely change that for her. But as far as like character development and getting hit in the face and whatnot, that was just in the cards for me. So
One of the huge things that I normally tell students, young individuals, and even early career individuals is focus on your core values, right? And you, right off the bat, at the very beginning of the conversation, you said familia, family is very important to you. So I, I urge the audience or whoever's listening to this episode to consider yourself lucky if you have family members and if you have individuals that love you to really weigh in on your decision of moving away from home. I'm not saying moving out of the house is not an option. You can stay within the same city and or you can grow at the same time, like Natalia has found out that you can definitely stay within the city of San Diego. For her case, in our case here, San Diego is home, and go to college, experience some of that moving away from home slowly, but at the same time you have a family support base, and obviously those individuals that surround you, immediate family, can definitely care for you, and they are on top of mind for you, and they're there for you when you need it. Sometimes they might not understand depending on how they are or where they're at in their college or career, but they can definitely listen to you and then lend an ear for you to actually reach out to them or come back and say, hey, I feel frustrated, I feel angry, I feel like a failure, whatever it is you want to share with them, and they might listen to you and give you some sort of comfort of sorts, right? And that's part of what familia is. Go ahead, Natalia.
yeah, I just wanted to add. I mean, so one really big thing, and I'll share this. It's very personal, but I like at Southwestern, I found a really great therapist through Southwestern. It's a free service, and I really urge anyone that's listening and that's a college student, and really anyone that to look into those resources at your college because the therapist I found at Southwestern, she was amazing and the reason why I got out of community college sane. And honestly, I still reach out to her. I actually have, since I'm taking so I'm at Cal State San Marcos, but I'm taking some classes at Southwestern for some of the lower classes. And I was like, oh, perfect. I get to be with the therapist again and kind of have new sessions with her. But it's really, really helpful mental health wise. I mean, if you are moving away, and honestly, that was my goal for so long. I'm like, oh, once I get the opportunity, I'm gonna move far away and just kind of be an independent person and figure it out on my own. That was, I mean, I've always been Little Miss Independent, even when I was younger. And there's funny stories on that, but um, that's what I wanted to do. But when it came down to the decision and knowing that my abuelita was not doing great health-wise, I was like, there's no way I'm going to get a call in Florida, North Carolina, and get that call that she's either passed or very close to it. It would break my heart that I'd be so far away. I mean, I of course would come back. Every college visit I did, that was one of the questions I made sure to ask, like, hey, my grandma's not doing so well, are you gonna give me issues on coming back home? Um, and yeah, that was one of the deal breakers. If they would have said, oh no, the team comes first, like that's a very huge red flag for me. I would have said no to any opportunity. But yes, having your family first, leaning on them, but also leaning on a third party can also be super beneficial. There's times where you just want to say something to get it off your chest, but you don't want to affect your
Right.
family or the people around you. So having that third party outlet is huge. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, if you need help, even if you don't need help, honestly, it's someone to vent to, it's someone um to conversate with. Um and they're not going to get hurt by what you say because it has nothing to do with them,
Right.
so.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that little insight and that little piece of advice. That's awesome. Right now, we're going to go to the rapid fire questions. So, for this session, for this portion, what I want you to do is I'll ask you a question. You say one or two sentences about what the response is that you want to share with the audience, right? Not to drag it on, but that's more or less how it goes, right? So, rapid fire questions. Good leaders always create good leaders. Do you have any individuals you look up to? Who are your mentors?
So short answer is everyone in SHIP that I've encountered. One of the first professionals I spoke to was Lázaro, and you definitely, I'm not even kidding, you definitely, you helped pave my path a lot. I mean, the fact that you reach out with a phone call and take the time to talk to young students and help them in their path is huge. So people like Lázaro and SHIP and other people in SHIP definitely guided me throughout this whole time.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very touching. I appreciate that. um, what's the one question you wish people would ask you, but they tend never to do that?
I would say ask me about my experience so they learn from it. In other words, maybe mentorship. I mean, I would help anyone that would ask. Not that maybe I've never, saying that I've never got that question is a stretch, but it's rare. So, I mean, I just have a lot of knowledge that I feel like I've picked up over the years. So if anyone needs a mentor, needs guidance in some of the spaces I've been in,
Yeah, so there
I'd
you go.
do it.
Hit Natalia up, connect with her, and ask her to be your mentor and guidance for anything that's student athlete related and or STEM field related. So you can definitely learn from her. That's great insight. Any particular book, movie, or podcast that you believe has made an impact in your life, and you wish more people would take advantage of it?
Hmm. Mm. So a podcast that I listened to a lot during COVID was Jay Shetty's Purpose podcast. That's what kind of inspired me to get into podcasting, especially during COVID. He just gives a lot of great insight on different topics. Like, I mean, it's a lot of it's specific to mental health or just life and how to get through life and deal with challenging situations. So I would say his podcast is huge. But yeah, I'm gonna keep it to one.
Okay, awesome,
'Cause I could
great,
probably
great.
find other ones.
Awesome, fantastic. What is your definition of success? Everybody has a different definition of success. Some individuals equate it to money, physical belongings, and or education. But what is your definition of success at this time?
I wouldn't say that success is like the end of the road or the goal at the end of the road. I would say it's even if you fail, it's the learning lessons and eventually getting to your overall goals is successful. It's the road's gonna be windy. It probably will be 9 times out of 10. Um, but if you stick to it and you're resilient, um, and you learn from mistakes, that's success to me.
Awesome. Awesome. Great definition. Being able to look back and say, hey, I learned something from this particular failure or this particular path and continue moving forward. That's the definition of success for you. Thank you for sharing that. This last question, this is a very interesting question. I want you to go back to that middle school young student that is just about to embark or jump off the bus coming back from Adelante Mujer. I'm pretty sure it took place either at UCSD or San Diego State, but you're coming back on that Saturday, right? And all of a sudden you have this epiphany moment and you're like, okay, I learned what engineering is and I want to become an aerospace engineer. I want you to go back and make sure that, Natalia Ojeda from today, right now, you can definitely open that closet door and pass through this time gate and meet your maybe 13-year-old self at that point and say, hey, little Natalia, I want to share some information with you. What 3 pieces of advice would you share with your younger self if you had about a minute or two?
Mm, This is a good one. um, I would say trust yourself.
Trust
Trust
yourself.
yourself because everything works out. Um, yeah, I would say trust yourself. Everything's gonna work out, and just try not to stress. Um, and enjoy every part of what's to come.
So trust yourself and enjoy everything that's coming, and everything will work itself out. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to acknowledge you, Natalia, for everything that you've done. You are successful at this point by being able to look back into your experiences and sharing some insight and sharing some knowledge. I want to acknowledge you for your open heartedness and the availability that you are willing to mentor individuals at the high school level and or community college level for them to learn from you and continue forward in their path, in their particular path. And I want to acknowledge you for your persistence of continuing to pursue your cybersecurity accreditation and for being a tenacious individual and following your path in cybersecurity by obtaining so many internships at such a young age. So with that, thank you so much for doing this little interview episode for Success Innovation. Thank you for your help and support with me. And also for the audience, thank you for listening. And I hope that you connect and or listen to Blue Skies with the Natalia Ojeda podcast. And if you want to connect with her, look her up in LinkedIn as Natalia Ojeda, and you can definitely reach out to her and ask her any more questions. With that, thank you so much. Have a wonderful time, and we'll see you next episode. Hasta luego. Gracias. Thank
Thank
you.
you.